Thanks. Happy to be here. This has been great so far today. So I always like to start a session with a group by just taking a little informal poll. I always like to know about usability of news and content. So how many people are still subscribing to print newspapers? Yeah. And how about print magazines? Let's hear it for magazines. Oh, wow, so many more. And how many people are considering a social app as a primary news source? Yeah, okay, so, that's the trend. So the media landscape is a challenging one for legacy publishers like many of us today. Consumption habits are changing rapidly, and that presents a whole new set of challenges for us in terms of how we reach our customers. Competition for mind share is fierce. People are now spending all their times on apps and social networks. Social platforms are considered publishers, and as you guys all know, everyone is a microblogger. So in a world with so many choices, how are we going to have our brands top of mind with this next generation of readers going forward? Increasingly, we have to spend a majority of our time thinking about how to distribute our content and engage readers on social. So on top of that, advertisers are demanding shiny new things, as they always do, and publishers have to keep up. We have to be great on mobile. We have to do video. We have to offer ways to integrate with social. We've got to do native. And on top of all that, now we have to be viewable. So it's a very tall order, and it takes up a lot of our resources. On top of that, the revenue equation is changing. With the growth of social, readers are not coming to our valuable homepage anymore. They enter from a link on social and go directly onto an article page. So we have to figure out how to sell the middle of our site at the premium rates that we've been selling our homepage at. And because advertisers are now measuring viewability, we've got to re-architect our pages. Ads should stick in view while the user scrolls through and reads. They need to load smartly, so not before the reader's eye gets there, but when it does. And as publishers, we really have to move towards selling engagement, time spent, not just impressions anymore, right? We need to move closer to the old broadcast model where it's time spent engaged with the brand. But unlike with TV, with tools like Moat, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Moat, we get viewability scores. So we still have that accountability that's been the hallmark of web advertising over the last 20 years. So time spent. Alongside the rise of social has come the move to mobile. And as some of the other speakers noted, we're not completely there, but a lot of us are almost at 50% mobile usage of our sites, right? So even though readers are shifting rapidly in that direction, revenue has not. So mobile is the biggest growth area in terms of usage, and advertisers want to be there, but we really haven't figured out how to monetize it effectively. For me, those tiny little banners just don't cut it, and I don't think they do for a lot of advertisers. So we don't have a great solution. Those banners are not commanding the premium. One way we're tackling this at Wired is we're actually undergoing a complete site redesign. We're moving to a responsive code base. So we're going to have an equally great experience across phone, tablet, and desktop. And one thing we're optimistic about is bundling inventory, where our mobile inventory can still be the icing on the cupcake, but we're selling the much larger cake. So I think we can all agree no one's cracked mobile from a creative execution standpoint, but I did want to point out something that I thought was pretty great. I saw recently my former colleague, Koi Vin, who was the head of design at New York Times for a long time, just launched an app called Wildcard. And its forte is really formatting content, and that's both advertising content and publishers' content for the mobile device, and it's designed in a card system. And I think it's really smart because I love looking at products like this. I mean, check it out. You can just kind of flip through this slideshow of products from a catalog, and for me, that's a fabulous way of viewing branded content on my mobile device. It just works. It works because it's designed for mobile. So I digress, but this is my optimistic note about the mobile advertising direction. So market dynamics, challenging. The good news, I think we all agree, is content is still king. Advertisers love it, users love it, and according to Mary Meeker, who is the guru we all know, social is a massive trend, and sharing of content dominates social. So, of course, people are sharing photos of their cats, but they're also sharing our great stories. So we're still very much in the mix, right? We write the stories, we identify the trends, we provide the thoughtful analysis, and we know how to do the beautiful packaging. We've got amazing photography, we have art direction. So we, as the creators of the great content, I think we can win, ultimately. But we have to change the way we work to be more efficient. We have to change the way we produce, package, and sell our content, and the way we engage with readers. So let me share a little bit about my vision for the future, and this is sort of how I would love it to see it go. So to future-proof our business, we've really got to reinvent how we create and sell products. We've got to be able to write once, run anywhere, and move fast. So here's how I think it should work. Do you guys all know, this is sort of a geeky thing, but this cylinder represents a database. Who knows that that was a database? Who knew? All right, okay. So here's the idea. You publish your content to one central repository. No styles, just text. You just throw it all in the database, right? Right now at Wired, and I don't know how this works for a lot of you, but we've got two separate systems, and they don't talk to each other. So the print people put their content into one thing, the web people put their content into another, and there's just no connections, right? And it's like extremely difficult to make those connections. So what we really need are new kinds of publishing systems, new types of CMSs, new types of dams that aren't driven by output format. We need to divorce the content from the display in these systems. So just create the content and dump it in. So sidebar, but look at these guys, BuzzFeed and Vox, right? They're native digital companies who have attracted huge amounts of investment because they're inherently designed for the social ecosystem, right? I mean, BuzzFeed is killing it. They're valued at $850 million, about half the market cap of the New York Times. And they get it, right? Their content is completely part of the social mix. It's just in their DNA, and they have no print shackles, right? It's a big deal. It's a huge competitive advantage. And Vox Media is the same thing. I mean, 150 million unique visitors across their network. It's a huge number. And you know, they also have a custom CMS designed just for digital content. So these guys have the right efficiencies, and it's something we should aim for. So back to my vision. Once you input the content into the database, we need to make sure it's tagged and structured. So we need metadata. And some of the other speakers spoke about this. We need data. We need to be disciplined. We have to be disciplined about our use of tags. The New York Times, I think, has had a really distinct advantage with tagging in that for many, many years, hundreds of years, in fact, going back to like 1875, they published this thing called the New York Times Index. And every story goes into it and is listed and is tagged. So they had this phenomenal taxonomy. They had this department of 3 people that was all just about proper tagging. So they have an incredible asset in that structured data, right? So when they wanted to create the New York Times cooking app, it was much easier to say, oh, easy, all the tags associated with cooking and recipes, let's just pull them out. So places like Wired, we're a little more challenged here. We don't have that team of taxonomers or taxonomists, I'm not sure what you call them, but we have to invent our own taxonomies and learn the discipline of tagging, and that's tricky. It's tricky. We're about to launch the site redesign, and when we look at the tag pages that we're creating, you know, there's millions of bizarre tags, and it's really hard to rationalize all these pages and to think that they're all going to be floating out there on the internet. So it's a huge challenge. So once you get everything into your database, it's all tagged and structured, then we have the ability to package and bundle, and this is my favorite part as a product person. Say I want to create a science app. Choose any topic, but let's say science. So I'm going to select all my science stories and output them at a given time frame. So say once a week, I'm going to publish all my science stories into my app container, and there you go. That's my product. It's a collection. So, you know, maybe you want to stick with this top stories on a given theme. It gets sent to you every 30 days. Sound familiar? But maybe not. Maybe we want to think about lots of different types of vertical products or products that go in different time frames, not sticking with this magazine parameter. So then we're ready to apply the template layer. And ideally, we've built these beautiful frameworks, and we can add any amount of sizzle we want to our presentation. So we take out our assets, our text, our photos, our video, and we add parallax, and we add sizzle, pull quotes, treatments, and maybe those templates are all kind of sitting there on a shelf and we can just say, oh, I want that one today and this story looks good in that one. So what I'm getting at here is there's not a ton of customization that we want to do every day when we're publishing a story. We don't want to spend weeks and weeks and weeks creating a custom template. We want these things to be off the shelf and ready for us. That's the kind of efficiency we need. But we still need them to be glamorous, right? They have to be beautiful because that's our forte as publishers. And that's a challenge, I think, for all of us who have seen sort of the art and the beauty that goes into producing a page for a magazine, and then you sort of look at the tools we have to present that same content on the web. You know, there's not parity. It's not as beautiful. We have a lot of technical limitations, but I'm dreaming about a day where we have fewer limitations and that content can look equally as gorgeous. So back to my model. Once I've packaged up my content, I'll just set the price depending on where I'm distributing it. And then, ideally, I'm distributing it to any partner, platform, or device. It should look equally great, right? I shouldn't have to worry about whether someone's seeing it on a phone or tablet or desktop. Ideally, we get past that and everything looks gorgeous because of all of the technology we've put into this process. So I should be able to say, this is going to go to Apple Newsstand, this is going to Google Play, this is going to Flipboard, this is going to the end user in some way. It should be simple. So for those of us that work in product management or maybe biz dev or partner management, we know what we go through every time we get asked for a feed. Why is it so hard? It shouldn't be. So then, as publishers, we just have to build buzz. And we're good at that, right? We're very good at that. So that's sort of my content creation vision in a nutshell. Hopefully it wasn't too technical for y'all. But once we've got that process fixed, and that's going to take us a while, then we have to focus on how we want to engage readers. And we have to be smart about it. You know, we have to go from being a one-way kind of content pusher where we just output and sort of stick our stuff on the newsstand and hope people buy it, and that's the end of the dialogue, to a real full circle relationship with our readers. So one thing, we've got to sort of own the story and curate the dialogue. The New York Times constantly saw their stories being surfaced on Huffington Post or BuzzFeed, and the dialogue and the drama was all happening over there. And so they were losing out on all of that engagement in the item. And that's an issue. We have to cultivate that dialogue. We have to figure out ways to be inserted throughout the dialogue because it's not just publishing a piece anymore. It's the whole social trajectory, right? How do we bring that right back to the brand? So one way is cultivating the community through comments. And ideally, you want to be monitoring your comments because we all know sites that go off the rails with commenters that just set a bad tone. And we've struggled with this at Wired. But it's super hard. I mean, the New York Times has done this tremendously well because they have this humongous network of moderators, actual humans. I mean, a lot of people. So that's really not a scalable model for most of us. So one thing we're trying at Wired is having editors sort of anchor the comments at the top by sort of framing a question or something about an item to really set the tone. And we're hoping for some improvement there. But comments are tricky. So we all have to remember, I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse with this one, but digital is job number one for everyone. So whether you're sort of a print editor or whether you were hired as a digital editor, it's everyone's job. And I don't know, how many of you guys read that leaked innovation report from the New York Times? So if you haven't read it, it's mandatory. I loved it because it contained so much of what I'd been sort of preaching for the last 10 years. But basically, the premise is sort of, it goes without saying that social and web components should be part of the story planning process. So ideally, you know, every editor or writer is responsible for sort of pushing their piece out into the social world and following it. You know, they should be, they should make sure their work is optimized for search. And that sort of goes back to my point about tagging. And not everyone has a huge social presence, and that's okay. You know, that's what sort of the main account, the main brand presence is for, the Wired Facebook page or the main Wired feed on Twitter. But there should be a lot of interplay between the social presence of your journalists and the sort of branded presence. So social, I mean, to me, it feels like the more you invest in it, the more you get back. Wired has now a team of 2 social editors. They hired the first one a couple of years ago, right when I got there, and it has grown 20% year on year as an overall referring source of traffic to us, and I'm sure that follows industry trends. It's not a surprise. But just fantastic return, and a great way to engage our readers. And there's wonderful tools like Social Flow. I don't know if any of you guys are using it, but they really allow you to monitor the right time to post, how much to post, and sort of get that nice balance of just being a good social player, right? Not posting too much, but really kind of optimizing it. And I think if you monitor the tone carefully for each of the platforms, you can really hit a home run in terms of engagement. So back to this theme of a relationship with our readers. It's got to be one-on-one, right? I mean, everyone that is a loyal fan, I mean, think about how incredibly grateful we are and how much we value the kind of people that come to our site frequently, you know, the kind of people that we think kind of open it up in a tab in their browser or actually enter the site through our homepage. It's a very deliberate action on their part. They love our brand, they come to us, they want to know what we think. That is getting just so much more precious than it ever was, right? Because in the day and age where everything shifts to social feeds, where people are just maybe seeing an interesting item and dropping into our website, there's just no loyalty there. So we've got to build that loyalty in this environment. And part of that, I think, is really knowing how to communicate with your readers. I'm a huge fan of push notifications and email. I mean, email is something we've been doing for the longest time, right? And it still really works. I mean, I get so many industry emails that I read religiously, and they're one of the first things I look at in the morning. And we see that with Wired. We have incredible open rates of up more than 20% when we just send out our weekly. So I love the idea of using email effectively. I think it's a great vehicle. And then we have to be smart about personalizing the experience. And this is really, really tricky. We have to be smart about what users see when they come to our sites. So if a user visits frequently, we have to show them things that they haven't seen before. I mean, if you're coming 3 or 4 times a day, on the 3rd or 4th visit, don't show me the headline I saw the first time I got there. So we also have to kind of be smart, and this gets into that scary territory of using the data that we know that we have at our disposal, which is, you know, if a user always goes to my science section or my design section, maybe I should surface that content to them first. So if they come into an article, and it could be an article from any section, on the sidebar or at the end, or however I want to get them there, if I know they always come to design, show them those articles first. I mean, that's a real lift in engagement. So one thing we saw when we've done a lot of testing over the last couple of years, and what we saw when users come to an article page is they do want choices. Everyone has a short attention span. So they may read the headline, they may read the first few sentences, and then that's kind of the make or break point. Either they're going to read the article, or they're like, I am out of here, I'm done. So we have to be super smart about what they see right when they get to that point, right? So you have to give them smart off-ramps, and that's what I'm talking about when it comes to personalization. That off-ramp, and what I mean by an off-ramp is surfacing an article of interest, surfacing something that's trending or popular. That's got to be of interest to them, otherwise we're going to lose them. So you've got to offer them choices where they want them, but you can't overwhelm them, right? You don't want to have super busy, crowded pages where you're throwing everything in the kitchen sink at them. So it's a tricky balance. And then these days, every publisher is going offline with events, right? And it's a great way to engage readers and to sort of really deepen that brand affinity. A lot of publishers are trying this, and let's face it, it's a tricky P&L. So conferences are expensive to produce, and you don't necessarily make that much back, but I think they can work. And we recently held our first Wired by Design conference. What is it, December? In the fall. And it was sort of a retreat up in Marin County, and it was really just this wonderful, wonderful day of Wired speakers and Wired subjects speaking about their craft. And it was a very intimate group, and the founder of Wired, Louis Rossetto, came up to me and said, "This is the most Wired thing I've experienced, probably ever." And that was such an amazing thing to hear from Louis. And he said, you have to do it again. So that was a great success in my book, and I think it's a model that helps us kind of connect with people in real time when sometimes it seems so hard to get that real connection online with our readers. On the question of talent or staffing, one thing that was surfaced in the New York Times report, and I just think it's so important, is digital talent has to be able to aspire to the highest levels of today's news organizations and media companies. The next breed of editors-in-chief in my book, they will all be digital natives, because understanding tech is now even more important than knowing how to kind of package a magazine in many ways, because this game is all about getting our content onto the right devices and distributing it to the right people. So that's how our industry is changing. So one more comment about how we need to change our processes. And this has sort of been what I've been really trying to do the last couple of years at Wired. When I came, I was the first director of product and was really tasked with building a product organization and a tech team. And one of the biggest changes was just thinking about the way we work, breaking free from this perfection of print, where down to the pixel, everything is super perfect. We all know that on the web, A, there just isn't time for that, but B, it's just a different medium. So you can't wait till things are perfect to share them widely and get feedback. And I mean internally, within the title, but also with readers, right? So, and I think this is widely accepted, especially out here in Silicon Valley, that you're going to iterate, you're going to launch something, and you're going to improve it, you're going to listen to the feedback, and then launch it again. And people are very clear, this product's in beta. We want to hear what you have to say about it, and then we're going to incorporate that feedback and those insights into our next round. But this is really a new way of working for media companies. They are not exactly comfortable with iterating. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge to kind of get that way of working into the culture. As a sneak peek, we are actually launching a beta website of our complete site redesign that I mentioned, and we have a sign-up page up as of yesterday. We're getting flooded with interest, so if you're interested in seeing an early version of our beta site in January, go to this link and sign up. And we will notify you when our site's live. And this is all in the spirit of going into beta. So we've made some great strides here. We're gonna be in beta for a few months at least. We want to hear what people have to say, and we've got a lot of work to do. And that's where we're going. So this is my little dinosaur. People say, "Oh, print companies, they're going to be extinct." Well, I don't think so. So honestly, I kind of feel like if we can make this transition, if we can shift our resources from print to digital, talent, change the way we work, I'm optimistic that we will survive and come out on top. And when I see a huge ship like the New York Times launching a whole slew of digital products that are very focused on specific targets, like they have done over the last couple of years, I am really optimistic. And although it's been sad to see a lot of layoffs there, I think it's all part of turning over talent and attracting the right skill sets for this day and age and the technology challenges we face. So I'm confident that Condé Nast is going to come through that tradition just fine, or that transition just fine. And I'm optimistic about what I'm seeing. I think we've got some great examples to follow with the likes of BuzzFeed and Vox and others. And this is not apples and oranges, but they're doing a lot of the right things, and we can learn from them. So I hope that I've given you some helpful tips today, a roadmap to navigate this transition from print to digital, and I wish you all the best of luck.
So Hayley did a great job because she actually left time for questions.
4 minutes.
4 minutes to go, yes, and we've got one up front right here.
You mentioned the league
If you could ask them.
The leaked innovation, was it, in the New York Times? What is that? Could you explain that?
If you just Google innovation report, New York Times, basically this is sort of a great way, I think, that the New York Times likes to tackle problem solving, is they form these groups, and they're kind of cross-department groups, and they all kind of collaborate and do a ton of research, like reporters want to do, and they really tackle the subject in depth by sort of researching the issue and recommending solutions. So this was a report that this team was led by the publisher, Arthur Sulzberger's son, and it basically laid out, these are the key things we need to do to navigate the shift from print to digital. And so a lot of the themes that I talked about today are in that report, because the report was very well done. It really kind of nailed a lot of the things that I think all of us as print publishers are going through.
Okay, another question. We're going to go to the back. Ready? There you go.
So you talked a little bit about personalization. Could you just kind of cover some of the variables that you take into account there, including like if someone's logged in versus being anonymous and just coming to the site, and then sort of how you personalize new versus old content, as well as stuff that people are interested in, and if your taxonomy sort of factors into that, and what else might factor in?
Yeah, so I don't have all of those answers yet. We are definitely going to be going into a deep dive of that phase of our product cycle next, after we get this beta out the door in January. We don't currently authenticate users or have them log in any way, so we need to do that. So that's going to be job number one. And then we can figure out what assets we have to work with to do the sort of proper targeting. There's a lot of different things going on in the back end. We have some resources that are available to us through what consumer marketing knows about people, but that's, our consumer marketing group, but that's a very small subset of our readers. So, I guess I don't have those answers yet. We really are going to have to do a deep dive and figure out what makes the most sense. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question. I saw this hand go up first, which doesn't mean it was actually the first up. It's just what I saw first.
Thank you. Newsletters versus social, I agree, both enormously important, essential to both. I've been doing some cost analysis on the resources we're pouring into both, and I'm finding the return on newsletters is by orders of magnitude higher than anything on social. I'm wondering what the value proposition looks like from your side.
Yeah, I've done revenue models for an email business, and I think it looks like it has great return because you can serve beautiful ads inside them. The readers that tend to click through on email will click through to multiple pages, not just drop into one typically. And I think that there's a lot of bandwidth to be customized about what you're sending and smart about it so that people will open it. So I agree. I think it's a great investment. And I've been advocating for that at Wired, and I hope that we'll be doing more of that in the future.
Do you find yourself tempted to shift resources from social to newsletters?
So same for us. Our social team are the ones that have to do all the email work. So a couple of things that we've done. One thing is we had this system of managing email that relied on Silverpop, a vendor that it was very difficult to use. It took up a lot of hours in the day. So one thing we're doing is we shifted to MailChimp. That freed up tons of hours, tons. And so much easier to manage your list. So not to be an ad for MailChimp, but I think it's a great service. So just if you can make sure you have the right efficiencies there, and we have a very fancy looking email. I think email does not have to be fancy. I had some tweet with Jason Hirschhorn, who does media redef, that email. And recently I went, do you guys know the email I Want Media? It was very old school in New York. It was this guy who put together this amazing roundup every day, and everyone in publishing read it. And it went away a few months ago. And so I'm sort of looking for what's my main roundup now. And so I looked at this redef email, but it's very fancy with the formatting, and it's not scannable. So email can be so simple to be effective. I think it's just and you can test this so easily too. How many stories should I surface? And give each of them some space. There's some basic UX there that if you just nail it, don't fill up the whole inbox view with one thing. surface a few. You got to be very cognizant of how users are using their inbox. I mean, the inbox is still one of the biggest things we do all day, right? We just click through email. So you just got to make sure that the first view that you see, damn, you got to nail it, right? So just, I think if you're smart about it, I agree. I think it can be a great investment. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks,
Thanks,
Hayley.
everyone.
So Hayley had the New York Times covered for us. The next speaker, Chuck Fishman, happened to work at another venerable institution, the Wall Street Journal. But as I was talking to him about how to introduce him, there was something that was even